So Zali, we've got Scott Morrison ousted, Frydenberg is gone altogether, and you, of course, as the original Teal independent, this is all your fault.
Oh, I would say communities have spoken, didn't feel represented, and so have really voted for change.
So look, I know you've already spoken to Mr Albanese with a bit of your wish list, but he has been clear, though, that he's not going to go harder on climate targets. So is that going to be a problem for you?
Look, obviously, we still don't know what the final count of the election is, so that may change everyone's attitude. But at the end of the day, I want to work collaboratively with the Albanese government in encouraging them to take the most ambitious, the necessary ambition on emissions reduction so that we can keep our environment more stable and ensure we're at the forefront of the boom that's coming across the world on emissions reduction and new energy.
But if he gets a majority, if he gets the 70 seats when governor within his own right, which is looking likely, I mean, what does that do to your relevance and the amount of power that you and the other independents have in Canberra?
Well, look, at the moment it's going to be a very slim majority if Labor gets to 76. At the end of the day, they don't have a majority in the Senate and we'll need to negotiate with crossbench and Greens. But we saw in the last 3 years, Morrison had a majority and still had to really be very careful, had to negotiate, and we certainly impacted policy by pushing them to net zero. So I have no doubt the crossbench and all the new members of Parliament will have a big impact on pushing this government to do better, because if they don't, communities will vote them out.
How do you think it's going to play out, Gareth? Do you think that Mr Albanese is going to be far more communicative with the crossbench than we saw previously?
Not if he's got 76 seats. He'll certainly, I mean, his style is to be consultative and to talk to people, so he'll certainly talk to them. But if he's got 76 seats in the House of Representatives, then he doesn't rely on Zali and the other independents to get legislation passed, and that's just the mathematics. But I thought he made a really strong start on the global stage yesterday, Ali. I think that on two fronts. One, he clearly indicated to the world that, yes, there has been a change of government in Australia, and yes, Australia is now open for business on climate change. I think he wants to have Australia occupy a leadership role on climate change, but also on China. There was no backward steps here. He got congratulated by the Chinese leadership. For the first time there's been any recognition for years from China that we actually exist. Without sort of rushing into that and resetting the relationship, he says, fine, you want to talk? Drop the tariffs on our wine, our barley, our rock lobster producers, and then, and only then, can we perhaps start talking about restarting the relationship. So I thought it was a very strong start for the Prime Minister on day one. Given everything that he would have gone through in the last 48 hours to get there, I thought he started well.
I mean, he walked in a pretty intimidating crowd, that, isn't it? You know, your very first day on the job, you meet the US president. I thought he handled himself pretty well. How would you like to see Australia's relationship with China progress, Zali?
Look, I think we need to be firm but respectful, and I think maybe that respect has been lacking in the last few years. But we need to be firm about our national interest and in particular our security in our region. And I think that requires a very sensitive diplomatic mix, which I certainly hope Minister Penny Wong will be adept at. But we absolutely have to make sure our national interest and security is protected.
I want to talk to you about today's exclusive report in the SMH and Age newspapers that some Liberal MPs approached Josh Frydenberg to challenge for the leadership back in September last year. Gareth, Mr Frydenberg said no, but I mean, what do you reckon would have happened had he pushed with that in September last year?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? You get into these hypotheticals, and I think that so much had been made of the fact that this was going to be the first term where an Australian Prime Minister actually served out the full term since John Howard. I think it would have set off, you know, you can say the what ifs and maybe they would have won if Frydenberg had been PM. I'm not sure that would have actually played out that way, because I think yet another leader being knifed would have just completely undermined the authority of the Liberal Party in perhaps a different way to what we've now seen. Maybe there was nothing that could be done. In any case, you can't have a challenge if you don't have a challenger. And Josh Frydenberg, to his credit, I think, has always been loyal to Scott Morrison. So it's not unusual for political parties to canvass different options, especially when they're behind in the polls, because self-interest kicks in and MPs get nervous. So I'm not surprised at the revelations that talks were happening, but really this was not ever a starter as a genuine challenge.
Yeah, your thoughts on that one, Zali?
Look, I would argue, what ifs, and, it's very hard and fortune favours the brave, I would say. But at the end of the day, I think the Liberal Party didn't heed the warning from Warringah 3 years ago that communities wanted stronger policy on climate change, on integrity and, of course, treatment of women, and we saw that in 2021. And so each of those MPs that have lost to independents had the opportunity prior to COP26 last year to cross the floor and vote for debating the climate change bill, for example, and they failed to do that, and their communities judged them on it.
All right. Well, hey, look, enjoy Canberra. It's going to be very different, interesting this year, isn't it, for sure?
I'm hopeful a much more respectful environment with a lot more incredibly professional, capable women.
Thanks, Zali. Gareth, appreciate your time.